Not having money in this country, it's like trying to swim in shark-infested waters with weights on your ankles. It's hard to fix, it's costly, and for generations of Black people, it's been compounded by decades of racist government policy. Let's take banking. If you have enough money, your bank might dole out travel points, offer lower fees for service, or give you free checking. If you don't have enough money, your bank can charge penalties for keeping too little in your account, or fine you for small infractions like temporary overdrafts. That's if you even have a bank. Thousands of branches across the country are closing in low-income areas, leaving people to rely on costly alternatives like payday lenders and check cashing services. And this isn't like in Jaws, when the shark eyes the lone swimmer. 64 million Americans don't have access to basic financial services. That's 1 in 4 Americans trying to keep their heads above water. So, the rich get richer, and the poor get poorer, and neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor gloom of night stays these couriers. Wait, what? What does the USPS have to do with this? Well, let's connect. Banking to your local post office. The post office may actually be one solution for the millions of unbanked or underbanked Americans in this country, and, by extension, help close the racial wealth gap. But first, a look back at how we got to this wealth gap. Rewind the tape, please, to slavery. Beyond the violence and humiliation of slavery, there's the fact that for 246 years, Black people couldn't own anything. When President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, Black people owned only 0.5% of the total wealth in America. Then, after the Civil War, powerful white Southerners wanted to keep their cotton mills spinning with cheap labor, so they said no way to granting freed slaves 40 acres and a mule, as promised by General Sherman and President Lincoln. Instead, they'd allow Black people to have a government-backed bank account, which might have been helpful, except the bank collapsed because of congressional mismanagement in 1874, and the depositors lost nearly $3 million. Then came the Black Codes, enacted by Southern landowners to prevent Black people from voting, trading, or testifying in court. And in 1896, we have Plessy versus Ferguson, where the Supreme Court blessed separate but equal, which just opened the floodgates of segregationist Jim Crow laws and kept Black people from accessing hotels, homes, hospitals, theaters, jobs, and so much more. Even in the rare cases where Black people were able to amass wealth or power, it was violently stripped away, either with a complicit or apathetic government response, as we saw in the 1898 Wilmington Massacre and again in the 1921 Tulsa Massacre. And it's not just what the government actively did to hold Black people back, it's what they didn't do too. President Franklin Roosevelt needed the Senate's Southern Democrats to pass the New Deal, which was one of the most progressive social welfare programs in history. To do that, though, he left Black people out of the package. Workers' protections were geared to jobs that white people held, and government-backed mortgage markets floated white people into the suburbs and left Black people in the ghettos. Even President Johnson's 1960s War on Poverty and Great Society programs were like offering Advil for a tumor. They advocated charity and education over a chance at prosperity and power for Black people. There were job training programs, but no real job opportunities. By the time Richard Nixon took office with his war on crime vision, the specter of the government facilitating upward mobility became politically toxic. The new rallying cry of conservatives in power was law and order, yet another axe swing on the wealth and freedom of Black people. Law enforcement would be the first line of defense in this new war, surveilling and controlling mostly lower-income Black and brown communities. Black people were told to invest in their own communities, in their own Black banks and Black-owned businesses. But what this amounted to was a segregated and unequal system without mainstream infrastructure and support. Today, a third of Black families report having no wealth or assets at all, and the Black community owns less than 2% of wealth in the US, up just 1.5% since slavery. And again, banks have closed branches all over the country in low-income areas, creating these banking deserts, And without banks, the sharks move in. The sharks from the earlier metaphor, but now I guess they're desert sharks. Anyway, you can't save your money when you don't have a place to save it, and you can't pay your bills without a way to cash your paycheck. So, you're left with costly alternatives that charge absurd interest and penalties. Over the course of a 30-year working career, these services can cost more than $86,000 in fees, which is twice the annual income for the average Black family. Now, if only there was an institution represented in every zip code that could already, by law, offer basic financial services. And that's our connection to the post office. Under current law, a post office could immediately offer electronic money transfers, check cashing, bill payment, prepaid cards, and ATMs. In fact, they've already provided these services in the past. From 1911 to 1967, the U.S. had postal banking. The Postal Service offered savings accounts, and by 1934, the Postal Bank had $1.2 billion in assets, or about 10% of the entire banking system. But in the 1960s, a drop in deposits collapsed the program. And the post office has one other advantage: trust. People trust their local post office. It's familiar, it's personal, and trust is big when history has already seeded mistrust in government-backed financial services like the first Black bank. Now, if anyone says, we can't give the post office more to do when they can barely deliver mail and are running a deficit, here's the reply. The Postal Service just helped deliver a safe and secure election by delivering millions of mail-in ballots in the middle of a pandemic, on top of their regular duties. And the post office was actually completely self-funded until a 2006 law required it to pre-fund its retirement liabilities for 75 years into the future. In fact, postal banking would actually help the post office out of its current deficit. The Postal Service estimates that offering banking services could actually add $8 to $10 billion in revenue a year. And there we have our connection: the post office and banking. The post office alone can't keep people out of the shark-infested waters of poverty, but it's one thing the government can do right now, without Congress, without any new laws. It's a lifesaver, and that's a start. On the next episode of Let's Connect, we're going to share actions you can take right now to help make postal banking a reality. Be sure to connect with us by subscribing to our channel, and we'll fight for economic justice together.